Good morning, class 11. Welcome to psychology class. And today we will start our first chapter, which is Introduction to Psychology. So the first point here is like if we think why any subject or why any discipline for that matter is difficult to define. So there are various reasons for it. And first is because of its vastness, because of the diversity of issues that that particular subject is dealing with. Definition, a limited sort of issues to deal with. So two reasons are there. First is that every discipline evolves with time, right? And second is that it includes variety of issues within that particular subject, and that is why it has a lot of material to deal with. So it is very difficult to define it with the help of certain concrete terms, right? And this is very true while we are talking about psychology, because psychology is considered as a comparatively new discipline, as a new science, we can say, right? So let us understand what psychology means. So first, the term psychology is made up of two words, and that is psycho and logos. So the word psycho means earlier it was considered as study of soul. Then, because soul was not something that can be concrete, that is tangible, that can be studied, that can be experimented upon, right? So, after that, we considered mind as a study of mind. So, mind is also, in similar terms, cannot be studied, cannot be experimented upon, and we cannot pinpoint where in our body or where in an organism a mind exists, right? So, next, we came to behavior. And why behavior? Because behavior is easy to understand, it's easy to predict, it's easy to pinpoint, because we have overt behavior also. Although we have covert also. Covert means internal, whatever is going on inside us, that is, whatever thought processes we are dealing with, is our covert behavior, whereas whatever we are showing is our overt behavior. Like in this present moment, whatever I'm explaining to you and how I'm explaining that to you is my overt behavior, right? And whatever is covert, the mental processes that have been carried on in my own mind while I'm explaining different topics to you is covert, right? So these are basically two types of behaviors. Now, to complete the meaning of psychology, it is psyche plus logos. So logos or logy, as we call it, is the scientific study of any discipline. So from this particular discussion, we can understand that psychology means scientific study of behavior, and in particular, we study human behavior. Although animal behavior is also being studied, because human brain is very similar to certain kind of animals, right? Like many experiments were conducted on rats, pigeons, and other animals and birds because of their similarity to the human brain, right? But basically, what we study is structure of and of course functioning of human brain, and which would lead to certain kind of behavior. Now, psychology's formal definition can be, or we can formally define psychology as a science which studies mental processes, experiences, and behavior in different contexts. So there are four basic points which are important here, and first one is mental processes. So what are mental processes? Any mental function, any kind of mental activity that we carry during a particular time is called as mental processes. Like I'm explaining these concepts to you. So my mind is kind of recalling all the information related to these particular concepts. So that is a kind of mental process. You are processing this information while you are listening to me and while you are trying to understand all these concepts. So you are also using certain kind of mental processes. So in that manner, each and everything or each and every act is actually, that passes through certain kind of mental process, right? So mental processes can be cognition, that means thinking; perception, that means to make out the meaning of some kind of external stimulus; then sensation, to understand what kind of stimulus is given to you, what kind of stimulus it is. Is it something that is audible to you? Is it something that you are smelling? Is it something that you are tasting? Is it something that you are seeing? Visual stimulus is also there, right? So these are some of the mental processes. Now, second point is experiences. So experiences are also important because we study different kind of experiences in psychology. And why do we study? Because experiences combined would lead to certain kind of behavior, right? Like if you have an experience, like you are moving down an alley and some dog is there and he just started barking, and he just followed you for some time, and you have to run from that particular place. So this is a kind of experience which you would label as bad, right? This is not a good experience for you. So you would feel a certain kind of fear towards dogs, right? So next time, if you are going alone at some particular place, so you would first look around for dogs or some dog, so that you would not be confronted with the similar situation again. So this is how our different kind of experiences would define our behavior, right? Now, next term is behavior. So behavior, next point is behavior. So behaviors are responses or reactions we make or activities that we engage in. So any kind of activity, be it a physical activity, be it a kind of mental process or mental activity, or it can be a verbal activity, it can be a non-verbal activity. Each and every activity consists or constitutes your behavior, right? So earlier also I've discussed two terms with reference to behavior, that behavior can be of two types. First is overt behavior, another one is covert behavior. So overt behavior is which is external, which can be visible to all the people around you, which is very easy to understand, which is very easy to see, right? Which is visible. And covert behavior is internal behavior, whatever you are feeling inside you, whatever you are thinking inside you. So it is just like sometimes you do not like some person, but that person is your family friend, or that is a kind of influential person whom you do not dare to show your disrespect. So you would hide your feelings, although internally you are not liking meeting him or her, but you have to meet him or her due to certain reasons. So that is difference between overt behavior. Overtly you would show a lot of respect to that person, right? So another thing is that behavior also can be shown in the form of reflex actions. So when child keep on weeping, when an infant keeps, so that is a kind of reflex action, because if they are feeling hungry, they weep, they cry. If they are not comfortable enough, then they cry. If they are feeling too hot or too cold, then they cry. If they want the warmth of their mother's lap, they cry. So in each and every situation, their only instrument of communication is crying. So that is the reason why reflex actions are important here, because reflex actions, as you would be studying in chapter 3, are actually related to spinal cord. These are not something that is learned. These are actually some reactions which are inborn, which are with you with birth, right? So for some time, for example, say 2 to 3 months, when the infant is not able to communicate in any way, he does not even understand the symbolic language, or he cannot use that particular language. He generally cries for each and everything that he wants. He generally cries, right? So that is also kind of behavior. Now, what do psychologists study as behavior? So psychologists study behavior as an association between stimulus and response. And this is what we would be studying under School of Behaviorism, or Behaviorism School of Psychology. So what behaviorists say, they say there is a clear connection between stimulus and response. So what is a stimulus? Stimulus is something that is provided to you through the external environment, right? That is stimulus. For example, whatever I'm speaking, whatever I'm explaining, it is a stimulus for you. Okay. So explanation of this particular concept is a stimulus to you. And response is how you are responding to that. Either you are understanding that concept or you are not able to understand, right? Not understanding. So that is your response. Okay. So like reflex actions are also comes under stimulus and response terminology. Like if somebody blows some air at your eyes, or if something is hurled at you, if I just throw this marker upon you, so you would be like defensive, right? So that is kind of reflex action. So this marker would be a stimulus, and your defensive act would be your response to that particular external stimulus, right? So we know that psychology as a discipline means as a subject of study, studies mental processes, experiences, and in turn it predicts our behavior, right? Or somebody's behavior for that matter. So what is psychology as a social science? We consider psychology as a social science because it includes human beings and it studies behavior of human beings under social and cultural situations, right? Under social as well as cultural context, or we can say social or cultural surroundings, right? So now next, as a natural science. So what are the requirements of a natural science? There are certain things which are required for some subject or for discipline of study to be called as a natural science. And these are like, first is if it is employing scientific method. So psychology employs scientific method. Now, what do we understand by the term scientific method? So scientific method includes experimentation, right? Experimentation is carried out, or different kind of experiments are being carried out under the wing of psychology with very rigorous control and with very rigorous kind of environment, right? So it is very similar to other scientific disciplines like physics, chemistry, biology, zoology, botany, etc., where different kind of experiments are being conducted, right? Next point is objectivity. What do we understand by the term objectivity? Objectivity is when there is a uniform criteria which can be employed on each and every individual, right? So that is called as objectivity. So whatever the results of any experiment are, we must be able to use them to that particular age group, that particular gender, to that particular population from where that particular sample upon which that study was being conducted was drawn, right? So according to that, the results would be objective. They would be uniform to each and everyone. So uniformity is important because under psychology, each and every human being is there, right? So we are not able to conduct experiment and surveys or case studies for each and every individual, right? So we have to have a certain kind of representative of the whole population upon which we can conduct the experiment, and then the results can be observed or can be generalized upon the total population rather than conducting the experiment or surveys or any other activity observation method or using any other method of psychology for the complete population, which is not at all feasible method, right? Now next is accuracy and precision. So we also know that any subject to be called as science, accuracy is must, precision is must. So same is observed in the field of psychology. Next is skepticism. Skepticism is like not considering each and every result of any experiment as the ultimate truth. There is always a chance of improvement. There is always a chance of having different kind of results if we are conducting it in different kind of environments. So that is skepticism. Any science and psychology accepts finding as true only after they have been verified over and over again and when all inconsistencies have been resolved, right? Next is testability of hypothesis. So this is also a similar thing. We conduct tests and experiments time and again, and we generally prepare such kind of hypothesis. Hypothesis is the probable answer to a problem, right? Probable answer to a problem. Like if I ask somebody what is psychology according to you, so somebody would say study of mind, somebody would say study of behavior, others would say study of soul, others would say like we are able to understand someone other's feelings and thoughts without asking them or without whenever they're not telling us. So that would be called as psychology, right? So these are probable answer to a problem, right? In actuality, psychology is the scientific study of human behavior or scientific study of mental processes, experiences, and behavior, right? In different contexts. Okay. So next is our points are like results should be repeatable, just as other science subjects. Results should be verifiable, and every experiment is done to measure something. There is some concrete criteria which should be measured. These cannot be vague experiments, right? There must be a factual knowledge, a basis for any kind of experiment. Then there is discovery of cause-effect relationship. So this is also an important point. Cause-effect relationship. What is cause-effect relationship? What is the cause of when somebody is performing better in the class, right? What is the effect if you perform better in your class, right? So this is called as cause-effect relationship, right? For example, I'm writing these particular topics here, and you would be able to understand these topics in a better manner because I'm presenting it on this particular platform also. So that is called as cause and effect relationship. That this particular thing would lead to that particular thing. If a certain person is behaving in a certain manner during certain kind of conditions, he would be behaving in a similar manner in different kind of in different contexts. His behavior would be carried on. His behavior would be comparatively consistent to different kind of situations towards different kind of people. So that is what we establish, or why we establish cause effect relationship, because we study behavior, right? And there must be some cause of that particular behavior, why a person is behaving in such and such manner, and what is the effect of that behavior that would also lead to certain behavior, right? Because everything is work as a stimulus and everything is can be as a response, right? So a particular behavior which you show to someone else could be a reason for different kind of effect on them. So that is cause effect relationship. Now next reason why it is called as science, because it is used to predict behavior. Next is universality. All the results of different kind of experimentation are, they are considered as universal for human beings. And then there is generalizability. So these results are also generalizable. These can be used on different kind of population, although the criteria must be similar. Criteria must be same, right? So this is why we called psychology as natural science. Next topic in your book is mind and behavior, the understanding of mind and behavior. So why it is important to discuss mind and behavior both while we are studying psychology? Because the study of psychology was actually started from soul and it moved on to mind, and then it moved on to behavior, as we know. But actually, mind is something which cannot be just left behind just like that, right? Because mind includes different kind of mental processes, different kind of mental activities which are important for doing or having certain kind of behavior also, right? So the contribution of Sperry, this is Roger Walcott Sperry, and a physicist called Roger Penrose, was immense while considering mind as an important part or an important aspect of psychology. So what is mind? Mind is actually something which is not physical in structure, just like brain, but it is important because all the activities which are carried through brain, which are considered as neural activities, which are considered as important activities for our body's functioning, they are actually passed through different kind of as different kind of mental processes, and these mental processes are actually carried out by mind, right? But mind is a separate entity. We cannot call brain as mind or vice versa, because brain is a physiological structure while mind is an abstract concept, right? We do experience mental processes, we do experience the presence of mind, but we cannot pinpoint it in our body, right? So that is why mind is an abstract concept, right? So they have given example of patients whose occipital lobe, which are important for vision, have been removed. But in during that situation also, they were able to respond correctly to location and configuration of different visual cues. Similarly, an amateur athlete lost his arm in motorcycle accident, but he continued to feel the presence of that ghost arm, right? So that is called as presence of mind. These experiences are indicative of presence of mind. Now, next example or a study is given here, which is conducted by Ornish, and Ornish has shown in his studies with his patients that with the help of different kind of we can say positive emotions and positive visualization techniques, patients can improve their physiological health. In patients whose arteries were blocked, they used positive visualization technique, and persons with blocked arteries was made to visualize their blood was flowing through blocked arteries, and after practicing this for some period of time, the arteries were actually the blockage was actually removed from these arteries, right? So based on such studies and different kind of other studies, a new discipline called psychoneuroimmunology has been developed or emerged, which emphasizes the role played by mind in strengthening the immune system, right? So now next topic is our popular notion about the discipline of psychology. So we all know that many people say, call it as a study of mind, a study of behavior, and many other type of notions. Everybody has, right? And we also, pinpoint, or kind of label people according to different kind of terminologies. So that is also called as psychology. Now, the most important thing under this topic is a study conducted by Dweck in 1975. She was concerned with children who gave up too easily when faced with a difficult problem or failure. So generally, it is believed that such children needs to be provided with easier problems so that they would not feel lack of confidence, and they would continue doing practice on different kind of problems, right? But what she did extremely opposite to this, right? So this is what psychology is, right? We always try to create something new. We always try to bring something new out of the regular routine or popular notions or established notions of different kind of people or psychologists as well, right? So Dweck's study tested this particular idea of her. She took two groups of students who were trained for 25 days in solving maths problems. First group was given easy problem which they were always able to solve, and second group had a mix of easy and difficult problems both. The second group had both the problems, so obviously in case of difficult problems they failed. Whenever this happened, Dweck told them that their failure was not due to because the problem is difficult, but due to lack of effort on their own part. Okay, so after certain time, when Dweck gave the different set of math problems to both the groups, then what was found was very different from the common belief. Those who had always succeeded because they were given easy problems gave up much faster when they faced failure than those who had experience of both success as well as failure and were taught to attribute failure to their lack of effort. So this was called as a study of attribution, right? How we are attributing, how we are providing cause to different kind of our experiences that would also affect how we are responding to that particular situation, right? So that is what was proven by Dweck's study, right? So these are different kind of ideas. Some people also consider psychologists as people who can do black magic, people who can control other people's brain, people who can change others' life, in just a fraction of seconds. People who can read others' thoughts, whatever is going on somebody's mind. So all these are kind of myths, right? We are not some kind of tantrics or some kind of people who can do such extraordinary, or we can say magical things at the just flip of a finger. But yes, we do study human behavior, but through experimental studies, but with the purpose of with a good intent, with an intent to help people who are suffering and who are not able to carry out their lives in regular routine, normal activities would be difficult for them. So this is what we call as popular notions about psychology. Next topic is evolution of psychology. So we all understand how psychology was emerged from the study of mind to behavior, and now we study how psychology as a modern discipline come into existence, right? So firstly, it is an important thing to remember that our present day psychology is very much influenced by the Western perspectives of psychology, or Western notions of what psychology can be, right? So the first lab, which can be called as the official opening of psychology as a field of study, was started in 1879 in Leipzig, which is a city in Germany, under the chairmanship of, or under the guidance of, Wilhelm Wundt. So Wundt was called as the father of experimental psychology, right? And Wundt was interested in study of conscious experience and wanted to analyze the constituents or the building blocks of mind. So psychologists during Wundt's time analyzed the structure of mind through introspection. So you would be wondering, how can we study the structure of mind? So it was just an assumption for those psychologists, or at that time, in that particular era, that mind has structure. Mind must be having different kind of units, just like brain is responsible for different kind of localized functions, right? Like we have different kind of lobes. We have 4 lobes in our brain. We have 2 hemispheres in brain. So each hemisphere and the lobes are important for different kind of functions, which is called as localization of function in scientific language, right? So similar notions were also considered about the structure of mind. So there is no structure of mind, or we cannot pinpoint mind, like Sigmund Freud also did later on during his psychodynamic theory, or we call it his psychoanalytic theory, where he divided mind into 3 types, and gave different levels of significance to these types, right? So mind does not have a concrete structure. We all know that today, but at that time it was not clear to them. And all mental processes and conscious experiences, of course, they carried out only with the help of mind or mental processes. So that is why mind was considered as an important part to study. Okay, so, and the process or the procedure, the method which they used for this was introspection. So introspection is actually, the method they used was introspection. So if we divide this term into 2 parts, it's intro means within, and spection means to look, right? So the whole meaning is to look within. So introspection was a method where the person who is concerned, he has to focus all his consciousness, all his attention on whatever is going on in his mind during that particular time, and then he has to report that, or he has to prepare a certain report based on those experiences, or those fleeting, based on those fleeting thoughts, right? But this was criticized, this method was criticized on the basis that when a person tries to express the different kind of mental processes and different thoughts which are fleeting, which are of fleeting nature, and which comes to his mind, he would not be able to focus his attention for a certain period of time when he was reporting them, right? Either he is writing or speaking or telling them to someone else, right? So during that particular duration, during that particular time, the attention is diverted. So that would be a kind of disturbance in your mental process, because while you are writing or expressing your thoughts, you also need to undergo or use certain kind of mental processes. So that in that way, introspection was not considered as a practical method to be employed. Now after this, what Wundt was started was called as structuralism. So first school was structuralism. So structuralism focused on structure of mind or conscious processes and how they are studying all this through introspection, right? Through introspection. Now, second school of psychology or thought of psychology we would call is functionalism. So just like structuralism was based on, focused on the structure of mind, functionalists were more focused on the functions of mind, because it is the function which is important. How a person is processing different kind of information, how a person is using different kind of mental activities to perform in a better way or to behave in a certain manner. That is the basic idea behind functionalism. Structure is of no importance for functionalists because they thought that if it is, if structure is concerned, there might be something similar in all of us because all the mental functions are more or less similar, right? So that is why functions are very important. Why do certain people behave differently than all others, right? So that is what can be explained on the basis of functions of mind. So functionalism was started by William James. William James started functionalism. And James believed that instead of focusing on structure of mind, psychology should instead study what the mind does and how behavior functions in making people deal with the environment, right? For example, functionalists focused on how behavior enables people to satisfy their needs. According to William James, consciousness as an ongoing stream of mental process interacting with the environment form the core of psychology. So they also employed, to a certain extent, introspection as a method, right? And John Dewey can also be considered as an influential functionalist psychologist, right? In early 20th century, then another school of psychology came into picture, which was Gestalt psychology. So Gestalt means form, right? The literal meaning of Gestalt is form. So form means what Gestalt psychologists thought that it is our tendency, it is the general and inherent tendency of human being to see everything in a certain form, to see perfection in everything. So that is what is the basic idea behind Gestalt psychology. And they considered that it is not structure of mind or functions of mind which are important, rather than it is important that what are those mental processes which leads to filling these gaps, right? Because everything is not perfect, right? There are gaps. Like if I say that this is a triangle, how would you consider this as a circle? Why do we see this as a circle and this as a triangle, while there is gap in between these lines, right? Because of our form perception, because we tend to see each and everything according to a set form, right? So we are habitual of, we usually fill these existent gap between these lines, automatically, right? So this is called as Gestalt psychology. So Gestalt says that it is the whole which matters, right? It is the whole. Whole means WHOLE, complete, right? It is the complete picture which matters rather than the parts. So these three lines are the parts of triangle. And if we tend to fill this gap in our, using our mental process, it would be a triangle, right? So these are not three lines, but a triangle. So the parts of this triangle, which are single lines, these are not important. Rather, these three lines together make a triangle. So that is meaningful. That is a complete thing. That is a whole. So that was the gist of Gestalt psychology, right? Now, they also say that experience is holistic, experience is complete in itself. It is a gestalt, right? We cannot divide experience into different kind of activities, है ना? Different kind of units. Experience is whole. If you are feeling happy, means you are happy. You are not dividing being happy into different units, right? That this is the cause of why I am feeling this, right? If you say that I am feeling stressed, right, and you divide the feeling of stressfulness into different parts or different ideas, like it might be that my body is generating more cortisol, right? So that would be kind of physiological explanation why you are feeling stressful, because of cortisol hormone, excess of cortisol hormone in your body, you would feel stressful. But that is not the actual feeling. Actual feeling of being stressed is something else, which you cannot explain completely in verbal expressions, right? And that is also different for everybody else. Okay. So next topic or the school of psychology was behaviorism. Behaviorism, as the name suggests, came under modern psychology during the later 20th century, and behaviorism focused on the basis of behavior. It based on the behavior rather than study of mind or consciousness or different kind of forms. It was actually based on the study of behavior. So this field of study was proposed by John Watson, and Watson proposed this field of study as simple stimulus and response connection. The stimulus and response connection that we have discussed earlier, right? So these are discussed as simple simple stimulus and response connections. For Watson, mind is not observable and introspection is subjective because it cannot be verified by another observer or the person to whom you are explaining or expressing your ideas, right? So that cannot be verifiable whether the person is telling the truth or he is making up the stories. Okay, so he defined psychology as a study of behavior or responses which can be measured and studied objectively. Behaviorism of Watson was further developed by many influential psychologists such as Skinner, who gave operant conditioning, Bandura, who gave observational learning, and Pavlov, who gave classical conditioning. This we would be studying in chapter 5, right? After that, we would be discussing about psychoanalysis. So psychoanalysis as a school of psychology was the fifth, I guess, school of psychology. Psychoanalysis. So psychoanalysis was given by Sigmund Freud, who was physician by profession. And it was during his clinical practice that he came to know or came to understand that the basic reason behind all the physiological illnesses was psychological. People who come to him with physical illnesses or symptoms related to certain kind of physiological illnesses, they are actually having psychological issues or which needs to be unearthed, right? So psychoanalysis, as developed by Sigmund Freud, used free association as a method. Free association is talking freely to your therapist, telling him whatever is coming to your mind. So this is also a kind of introspection, right? Whatever you are feeling, whatever you are behaving, however you are experiencing at that particular moment, so that is called as free association, telling freely to the counselor. So under psychoanalysis, Freud gave much importance to unconscious mind as a part of mind. According to him, it was the largest part of mind, and it consists of unresolved conflicts and motives, which are immoral specifically and not in accordance with society. So that is why the person is not able to express them to someone, or he is not able to fulfill them, as we strive for different kind of motives which are worth achieving, but these specific motives were immoral in nature. So that is why they are pushed they generally pushed by the person or the client into the unconscious. So by that definition, we can understand that unconscious works as a storehouse of these particular desires which remain unfulfilled, conflicts which are not resolved, issues which always, which kind of pressurize you, which you do not like to discuss about which you do not have any answer, and you do not either have any solution, right? So all these aspects of our mind or our mental processes are pushed into unconscious mind, and these sometimes, when they are too much to handle by the unconscious mind, they try to push themselves into consciousness, into our actual day-to-day life, and then some kind of activities happens which can be spelling errors. Another one can be writing mistakes, or slip of tongue, right? You want to say something but you say something else, right? So that is slip of tongue. Now next important, and also one more thing is there, like psychoanalysis is called as third force in psychology. Sorry, second force in psychology, because it gave such a popularity to psychology, the field of psychology, that was never ever established by anyone. And the first force is of course called as behaviorism, and then there is humanistic school of psychology. So this is the most positive school, we can say, which considers human beings as inherently good. Human beings as good, right? They are not some people who needs to be controlled. They have their own self fulfillment motives which are positive, right? And they also gave need hierarchy theory. Need hierarchy theory, according to which we have different levels of needs. The first level is our physiological need, like food, like water, like rest. So these are all physiological needs. After these needs are fulfilled, we move on to safety needs, right? So safety needs are, we need some shelter. So this is very simple to understand. Like when we say that when your tummy is full, when your stomach is full, then only you think about building a house, right? And after building a house, what do you think? You think about owning a car, right? And then after you have a car, a simple car, then you would think about buying some luxury car, right? So this is just the need hierarchy. How your needs are, always in a hierarchical order. First, there are physiological needs, then there are safety needs, then there are belongingness needs. You need to be loved, you need to be cared for by your parents, by your friends, by your relatives, right? So that is, after these basic two needs are fulfilled, after that you think about belongingness needs. After belongingness needs, there are other higher needs, better needs, we would call them beta needs. And after these needs are fulfilled, ultimately there is self actualization. So these are like first, second, third, fourth, and this one is fifth. So these are physiological needs. Then there is safety needs. Then there is belongingness needs, right? And then there is, when we start hoarding things, right? So this is a kind of state which where we start attaining luxury, and then at last there is self actualization. Self-actualization is called as meta need. Meta means higher order need, most important need. But the thing is that only 1% people reach this stage, self-actualization, because others keep on moving between all these stages, right? When your physiological needs are fulfilled, you would think about security needs. When your security are fulfilled, you would be busy with belongingness needs. And many people are moving just in between, right? Belongingness, you can come to again to the safety needs if situation arises in such a manner, right? So maximum people will move in these particular areas. Only 1% of people will move to self-actualization. And some example of people who self-actualized their potential was Abraham Lincoln, Mahatma Gandhi. Others could be like Albert Einstein, right? People who actually, gave everything to the work they do, right? Gave everything for their ideology, lived a very simple life, focused on the basic essence of life rather than creating luxuries and rather than hoarding different things for themselves, right? Who thought about the majority, who thought about the society, at a large extent, rather than considering their luxuries and their personal identities first, right? So these are different kind of schools of psychology or approaches with which we study psychology, right? With the advent of computer, with the starting of computer era, we try to understand the structure of mind. We again focused on structure of mental processes, right? And this led to what we call as cognitive psychology. So how our mind functions can be explained or can be understood with the help of this particular approach for the study of psychology. And cognitive perspective focuses on how we know the world, how we understand the world, how we understand different kind of activities going on in the world, and how we learn and remember them, and then we process that information for living a life which is satisfactory, right? So cognition is the process of knowing. It also includes thinking, understanding, perceiving, remembering, and problem solving. Also decision making is also there, right? So some psychologists view the human mind as information processing system, just like a computer. So just like a computer, we also process information. We get information from the environment. Like if I say like I would be conducting a class test tomorrow on this particular topic. So this is a kind of stimulus for you, and information which needs to be processed, and you process the information and you understand what does that mean. That means you have to prepare this topic to perform better in the class or during the test, right? So this is how a computer process the information. We give the commands to computer, and the computer works in that particular manner, right? So similarly, a brain, or we can say mind and mental processes, also function in the similar manner. Now, mind is receiving, and is processing and transforming, also storing and retrieving information from different areas, from different contexts. And modern cognitive psychology views human beings as actively constructing their minds. So why we are actively constructing? Because we are active. We are not passive. Everything which is being fed to us, every information that internet provide to us, we do not believe that, right? We always try to, be objective. Always try to search for the truth. Always, we are counterfactual. We always counter the facts. Always try to bring out the information out of all that lot of information which has been provided to us. So that is why we are actively constructing our mind, as well as actively explore the physical and social environment, right? So this view is also called as constructivism, because we are actively constructivism. Okay, so we are constructive in nature. We are productive. We are not a passive observer. We are not a passive reservoir of information, just like a computer is, right? Computer को तो whatever command is being given, he would act only that, है ना? उसी पे he would be acting, उसी पे he would be operating. But we can actively create our own information. We can understand whatever is not being told with the help of experience, with the help of external cues that are being provided to us, right? Now, next topic is development of psychology in India. Development of psychology in India. So, as we studied in the world, it was the year 1879, which was important for the birth of psychology as a different discipline, as a full-fledged discipline in itself. Similarly, in India, it was the year 1915, which was important when Calcutta University started experimental psychology and introduced it in its curriculum, right? Calcutta University started the first department of psychology in 1916 and another department of applied psychology in 1938. You need to learn all these years, right? Beginning of modern experimental psychology at Calcutta University was greatly influenced by the Indian psychologist Dr. N. Sen Gupta, who was trained in USA in experimental tradition of Wundt. So Wundt was the first person who established experimental lab at Leipzig. Remember, in 1879. So this person, Anand Sen Gupta, was a professional in that particular stream of psychology. Another Professor G. Bose was trained in Freudian psychoanalysis. We have that just discussed by me. And Professor Bose established Indian Psychoanalytical Association in 1922. Department of Psychology in Universities of Mysore and Patna were also early centers of teaching and research in psychology. And modern psychology has grown as a strong discipline in India. And later on, two other centers of excellence in psychology were also established by UGC, University Grants Commission, at Utkal University, Bhubaneswar, and at the University of Allahabad. About 70% universities, this time, or about 70 universities offer courses in psychology, right? So this is an explanation that about a book in psychology written by Durganand Sinha, a psychologist, Psychology in a Third World Country, The Indian Experience. It was published in 1986 and it provided the developmental phases of psychology in India, right? So this you need to study. It is divided in 4 parts, right? And this you need to study whatever is given in this book. Okay. So this was the journey of psychology in India, right?